What's up, YouTubers? So before we get started with this video, on First Take, they're going to be talking about Chicago Bears linebacker Khalil Mack and how he's just been ranked the 10th overall best player in the league. Also, they're going to discuss whether or not he should stay with the Chicago Bears. So let's see what they have to say about that.
Should Khalil Mack want out of Chicago?
In reality, or like theoretically, right? In reality, he'll let's see what Nick Foles has to do. But if you're asking me my opinion, not knowing what's in his heart, what he really wants, but like my opinion, if I were him, I would want out. And the reason is Chicago in my whole lifetime, even the year they won the Super Bowl, who's their best quarterback? They can't get the most important position in football, 47 years old, really right in any real way, ever.
True.
And so if you're Khalil Mack, especially a guy whose numbers are not going to match how great he was, and still is, because he could be used all around. There were years with the Raiders early on where it's like, he's better than the numbers really say, because he's being used this way, he's being used that way, but he's capable of doing so much. A guy like that with a Super Bowl ring, that's one thing. Even your post-NFL career, the way you are remembered when the all-time greats are discussed, all that. That's one category. And then there are lots of guys who were dominant players in their time, but they didn't have a Super Bowl ring, and maybe the numbers won't quite reflect how dominant they were, although he has great numbers, don't get it wrong. And they get perceived another way. So if I were Khalil Mack and that stuff were important to me, yeah, I'd want to go to a place where I had confidence they're going to get the most important position right. Because with Khalil Mack on your defense, already you almost have that right. He's a dynamic.
True.
And still great defensive player who is, going to be probably in the Hall of Fame one day. Bill Barnwell just had a piece about this. What players are going to make the Hall of Fame. Khalil Mack, I believe he says, a couple seasons away from making the Hall of Fame. If he puts up Pro Bowl type seasons, which I think he can. I think he will. So, yeah, if I were Khalil Mack, I'd want out.
So I somewhat agree with Max Kellerman here. But Khalil Mack, he's definitely a baller. I can see him being ranked the 10th overall player because he's a baller. Last year he had like 8.5 sacks, I think 5 forced fumbles, and some odd 50 tackles. That's not the super best year, but that man's taking double teams and he's all over the place. So I think what it really boils down to is whether or not if he stays with Chicago Bears is what he wants. Some guys want as much money as they can get, and they put getting a ring secondary as long as they get as much money as they can get. But some guys get a certain amount of money and then they start chasing for a ring because that's going to eat you up. You can't buy a ring. You can't buy a ring. You can have a ton of money, but you can never buy a ring. And you don't want to be sitting at the end of your career like Carmelo Anthony or Charles Barkley for basketball or Dan Marino for football, and you don't have a ring because that's going to eat you up. Especially if you took the money over the ring, that's going to eat you up. So I think it boils down to what Khalil Mack really wants. So let's continue.
I wouldn't, and here's why I don't feel that way, because I'm going to give credit where credit is due to the acquisition of Nick Foles, and I think that there are good things that could potentially happen here. The man is a Super Bowl champion. He has worked wonders. You've raved about him in the past, Max, and we all know that Mitchell Trubisky has been the Achilles heel for this team. I also point the finger at Matt Nagy from the standpoint, Tim, I'm of the mindset that if you, for some reason, when we saw Mitchell Trubisky run the football effectively, they were more of a threat offensively in terms of moving the chains and doing things of that nature. And I think that that's something that Nagy tried to cut back on, at least in the early part of the season, because he wanted really to him become more of a pocket passer, and become accustomed in that regard and to do things more effectively for that position. So him and the quarterback had to get on the same page. And I think now that Nick Foles is there, it's going to help tremendously. You still got David Montgomery and Tariq Cohen. Tariq Cohen can ball. We see what they can do. You got them at the running back position. You got to look at the wide receivers position with Allen Robinson, Cordero Patterson is there now and stuff like that, and Anthony Miller. So I look at those guys, and I think that you can do some things. On the defensive side of the ball, the reason why I mentioned all of those things offensively is because defensively, you were ranked 4th defensively last year. You were led by Khalil Mack with 8.5 sacks. In the 2 years that he's been there, he's had 11 forced fumbles and 3 fumble recoveries, along with his 21 plus sacks or something like that. You just look at what he brings to the table defensively, and you look at what they have at the cornerback position as well. I'm just thinking about a Kyle Fuller, guys like that. And I'm saying to myself, excuse me, this defense is legit. It's real. And then it's in Chicago. It's the Windy City. And obviously, when you go to Chicago, you're going to have a difficult time scoring points just because of weather conditions alone, for crying out loud. So all all of those things get taken into consideration. If you are Khalil Mack, you should have profound faith in what you can do defensively. So it's really a question mark about what you're going to get from the quarterback position, because that's really where your Achilles heel offensively lies. And with Nick Foles being there, he's either going to push Mitchell Trubisky to be what he was supposed to be as the number 2 pick that was taken ahead of Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes and stuff like that, or he's going to wet the bed as usual, and Nick Foles will step in and be able to do something. If I'm Khalil Mack, I have some faith. I stay in Chicago.
So if I'm Khalil Mack and you really want to win a ring, I would probably go someplace else. I'd go to maybe a Green Bay with Aaron Rodgers, maybe New Orleans with Drew Brees, maybe San Francisco with the Jimmy Garoppolo. All these different teams that he can look at going to that are competitors. But I don't trust Mitch Trubisky. I don't trust Nick Foles to be able to get the job done. So I definitely have to leave if I'm Khalil Mack and I'm looking for a ring. So he's old enough or he's young enough that he can maybe give it a little bit, maybe another year or two. And if things don't work out then he can seriously think about, switching to another team or going to another team and, chasing that ring. But Khalil Mack is just too good to not be able to retire and have a ring and be a Hall of Famer and be a part of that elite group. Because like I said, you can't buy a ring. You could have a ton of money, but you can never buy a ring. You have to earn that. So once you retire, that might eat you up, the fact that you didn't get a ring. You have plenty of money, but you can't buy a ring. And some people are bitter that they've never got a ring. So let's continue.
Look, I have some faith, and I stay in Chicago as well. I'm going to address the first point Max made about, Bill Barnwell's article and talking about potentially being a future Hall of Famer. There probably isn't a better organization to be a star linebacker than the Chicago Bears. I mean, maybe you can make the argument it's the Steelers. You can make an argument maybe for the Dallas Cowboys. But the reality is, if you're a stud linebacker with the Chicago Bears, even if you aren't winning championships, everyone recognizes you. Everyone. And part of the reason why, if you're opting out or you want to be somewhere else, be careful what you wish for. I know we have the graphic up about the top 15 players. Well, number 15 was Chandler Jones. And on a national level, people don't think of Chandler Jones as a similar type player, but in reality, he is. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that he's in Arizona right now. Now, in terms of his current situation, look, his contract's not out of whack, so he should be happy with his contract. He's playing for a great defensive coordinator in Chuck Pagano. Anyone that's ever played for Pagano has loved playing for him. Yes, they were 8-8 last year. They really struggled on the offensive side of the ball. Stephen A., you pointed out it wasn't the defensive side that was holding them up. And oh, by the way, with the addition of Robert Quinn, a guy who's a double-digit sack guy, you would think that Khalil Mack is going to get some better opportunities than he's had in the past. So This is a team that just a couple years ago were 12-4, and if they get the quarterback situation figured out, and by the way, Trubisky was the starter that year, if they get it
Doesn't matter. I don't trust him.
figured out with a guy that's an Andy Reid disciple, then shoot. Yeah, I don't know why there needs to be this situation where you look at Chicago where it's just a place you can't be good and they can't.
Well, because of their past track record, they haven't been, too good. And I know they went 12-4, whatever they just said, with Mitch Trubisky a while back. But still, overall, they haven't been able to get the job done. And if I'm looking for some jewelry, I'm definitely going to have to be looking elsewhere if they're not, if they keep on staying consistent with not having a quarterback that can get you to the top. So if I'm Khalil Mack and I have enough money that I feel comfortable with, I might look to go someplace else and get a ring. Because like I said, there's nothing like being a Hall of Famer and you've never won a ring. It doesn't feel right. That seems like a contradiction. Although it's not going to be his fault, but you want to win a ring and you want to be in the Hall of Fame and you want to have a full, successful career. Because like I said, you can have a ton of money, but you can't buy a ring with that. You have to earn that. And you don't want that eating you up later on in your life. So let's continue.
Get the quarterback situation right. I mean, it takes one is really all it takes.
Hey, listen, I forgot to mention Raekwon Smith. Hold on, Max. I forgot to mention Raekwon Smith because obviously he can ball as well. So you've got your quarterback positions locked up. You got your linebacker position locked up. You got a guy that can get to the quarterback and then Quinn as well. So when you look at it from that perspective, I expect their defense to be even better, particularly if they get any kind of production offensively, just moving the chains, killing the clock, allowing your defense to be fresh and rested and all of those things. And again, Cohen can ball. Montgomery is no scrub. And you look at their wide receivers, they're not scrubs either. This comes down to the quarterback position, and I bring up the